Well, hello and welcome to this special presentation of Big Country Politics. I am Manny Diaz. Today, our special guest is Jodey Arrington, District 19 Congressman representing us right here in West Texas. Congressman, welcome to the program today.
Great to be with you and to speak to my constituents through your local station. I'm anxious to give them an update on what's transpiring on the fiscal side of our country's affairs.
Well, definitely. Well, you are, you introduced House Bill 2811, the Limit, Save, Grow Act on Tuesday in effort to combat the lifting of the debt ceiling. Republicans want a debt ceiling. Democrats want it lifted. For the average American, Congressman, certainly the West Texan, what does this bill mean to them?
It means that we will start to extinguish the flames of the cost of living crisis created by reckless spending politicians that seem to want to clutch the blank check that they have when every other American family has to tighten their belts and change their spending habits because of the fiscal policies of this administration, primarily the spending from my Democrat colleagues. And it means that we're going to right-size the federal bureaucracy. Coming out of COVID, there's a lot of waste, there's a lot of woke, there's a lot of unnecessary spending, and we need to right-size the people's government. It also means that while we're in a downward slide into recession, we don't have to accept that. If we unleash American energy, if we rein in this unprecedented barrage of regulations from this administration, and if we simply require able-bodied adults to work who are receiving public assistance, we won't have the labor shortage. We can start to recover as a country, and we can put our nation on a path to prosperity.
The U.S. government has defaulted on its debt only 4 times in the history of the nation. What is the immediate and long-term damage if the debt ceiling dilemma is not addressed?
Well, the first point I want to make is it's a false choice by my Democrat colleagues to say, you can't do these fiscal reforms in relationship to raising the debt limit. That's not true. In fact, Joe Biden himself negotiated the last significant fiscal reform, which was the 2011 spending caps on discretionary spending, which is one of the elements in our proposal. So we can lift the debt ceiling, we can pay our bills, and we should. We should protect the good faith and credit of the United States, but we should also protect the future of our country and our children's future in this country by putting common sense spending controls in place. So we've done that, and our debt limit is responsible because it includes those spending controls, and it's the Democrats' turn and the president's turn to return serve or to counter offer their set of proposals, but there have been none. They're just saying we need status quo, and the president is, I think, burying his head in the sand at a time when our nation's economy, security, and even our way of life will be irreparably harmed if we have a sovereign debt crisis. Good leadership would never avoid this, would lean into it, and we'd work together, Republican and Democrat, on a responsible solution and path forward.
The Democrats talk of, a government shutdown. How is that possible? Explain, what would happen if that were to happen, if that were to go down, and certainly explain the intangibles here.
Well, look, if the Democrats don't respond with a responsible debt ceiling and bring back their counter offer, if you will, then they are jeopardizing risk to markets for sure. And they also are jeopardizing funding the government. We will pay our bills. We have $1.5 trillion deficit or gap between what we bring in revenue and what we spend for our government. So we have to prioritize paying our creditors first, just like our parents and grandparents taught us. And then we have to pay the bills for this big government that has grown, by the way, by 40% since 2019 at the beginning of COVID. So you can't tell me that we can't find savings, that there's not waste and woke and irrelevant programs relative to the core functions of the people's government, where we can get this thing, put this thing back together and do it in a responsible way. But yes, we're going to pay the creditors first. We'll pay military personnel. We'll pay our seniors with respect to Medicare and Social Security. We'll pay our veterans. But there's a whole lot of government that is unnecessary and wasteful. There's a whole lot of woke programs, I can assure you, that are related to extreme Green New Deal climate policies or the politicization of race and sexuality all throughout this government, and a number of things that the American people would be disgusted with, let alone, surprised by. So that's how this thing works. We will pay our nation's priorities, our veterans and the like, but the Democrats have to come up with a solution to cutting waste, and they haven't countered with any proposal at all. And for the last couple of days, hours upon hours of debate, I haven't heard my Democrat colleagues once talk about the most vulnerable group of people in the United States. That's the American children and grandchildren of these adult leaders here in our country who have no seat at the table. They have no say in this town, but they're going to inherit the highest level of indebtedness this country has ever known. $31 trillion, over 125% debt to GDP. Totally unacceptable and totally irresponsible. So I hope they change their minds, negotiate, and we move forward responsibly.
Last question for you, Congressman. Senate Democrats are calling the bill dead on arrival. How confident are you in getting your colleagues on the other side of the aisle to go along with this bill?
Well, I would just counter to my Democrat colleagues that our children's future will be dead on their arrival when they're trying to start their families, pursue their dreams, make a living. They won't be able to when the taxes have to be raised so high that we'll have nothing in the way of an economy, but nobody will let us borrow money, so we've got to find it somewhere. Or when the cuts are so deep that we undermine our food supply through farm bills and farm program safety nets, or senior safety nets, or just supporting our military against whatever threat might arise, namely China. How do we fund that war that could happen if they, for example, invaded Taiwan? This is a very fragile future for our children. It's a situation that no responsible leader would ever put the next generation of Americans in. And in fact, no other generation of American leaders has handed the country to the next worse than they found it. They always find a way, Americans and American leaders, to sacrifice, to muster the political will, to take the tough decisions so that the children and the next generation of Americans can prosper and be blessed with the freedom and opportunities that we've had. That's the mission I'm on. And I'm asking Republicans and Democrats alike, the president and every person in the upper chamber in Congress, every U.S. senator, step up to the plate for your kids and grandkids and do the right thing by them and by this great nation that we've been so blessed to steward as elected officials.
Congressman Jodey Arrington, thank you so much for joining us today, our West Texas Congressman.
Thank you, Manny. God bless, and go West Texas.
For Congressman Jodey Arrington, I am Manny Diaz. This has been a special presentation of Big Country Politics right here on BigCountryHomepage.com.